Alright, so the DCEU is known for one thing and one thing only. It's villains. That's not true, but there are some interesting ones in there. So today I thought I'd do a tier list of the villains in the DC Extended Universe we've seen so far. If you want to make your own tier list, there's a link to this down below. Now, 2 disclaimers up front. 1. Not every DCEU villain is here. It does have the main ones, but before you comment, yes, I'm aware some side or secondary villains aren't on here, but this covers pretty well the main antagonists. Also yes, the Suicide Squad members technically count as protagonists in this case, just so we're clear. And 2, here are the tiers I have for today. Good, meh, bad, what were you thinking, and Steppenwolf. The thing is, with this assortment of villains, I don't think any of them are really incredible, like classic movie villains type of thing. I think the best of them are good. They're either well acted or intimidating or work well as villains for the films they appear in. They're good. But I can't say they're insanely amazing. That's why there isn't a category called phenomenal or god tier, because I think the best of these are quite good, but that's as high as it goes for me. Also spoilers for all the DCEU movies, let's get into this. Enchantress, starting off strong here. I'm gonna put her in bad. We're 0 for 1, right off the bat. Much like a lot of elements in Suicide Squad, she just wasn't very well developed as a character. Pretty basic supervillain stuff here, and anything that could be interesting about that character isn't explored with that much depth. I will say this shot is kinda cool, but that's about it. She creates generic mud monsters, she creates a generic skybeam. Cara Delevingne isn't that great in this movie. Nothing much more to be said here. Next up is Ocean Master, and you know what? I'm gonna put him in good. Again, he isn't an amazing villain in general, but out of these, he's one of the better ones. And I think that's because he works so well in the movie he's in. Because Aquaman is such an absolutely insane, ridiculous film, a villain that is very over the top, chewing all the scenery, works quite well. The way he says the potentially stupid sounding in live action name Ocean Master just works because this movie commits so much to being ridiculous anyway. His costume is also pretty fantastic from a comic book accuracy perspective. Again, only something that could really be pulled off in a film that commits to being so comic book-esque. So yeah, not the best villain ever in general, not a ton of depth, and I never found him really intimidating, but out of these, one of the better ones. Steppenwolf. Ares. Not that this villain doesn't have any interesting aspects to him, but he doesn't have a lot, which is why he's going in bad. I mean, the twist that someone on Diana's side was the villain all along could have been sort of interesting, at least in the sense of Diana questioning her philosophies on who can be good or evil. But I feel the whole ending of Wonder Woman is quite confused thematically. I thought it was going to have a pretty great twist in that you can't just stop some giant, ridiculous supervillain and then everything will be fixed. It's actually people who can be evil too. But then, after that reveal, she does fight a giant, ridiculous supervillain, and then things are fixed. So anyway, as a villain, he's not great. Thulis is a good actor, but his villain dialogue is extremely cartoonish and also generic.
Then I will destroy you!
And unlike in Aquaman, where it really committed to the ridiculousness, it doesn't really work or fit in this movie. Plus his big final fight is just smoke and lightning and darkness and nothing that exciting. So yeah, not great. Okay, Mark Strong in Shazam, aka Dr. Sivana. I know this might shock some people, but I'm putting this one in good. I know, I seem to dislike a lot of what people enjoyed in Shazam, and I liked the one thing that people didn't like. It's weird. I should rewatch that movie sometime. But regardless, I quite enjoyed Mark Strong's over-the-top performance in that film. In a similar way to Aquaman, the movie on the whole is more silly and cartoonish intentionally, and I felt that this cartoonish villain design and exaggerated villain performance worked really well for that. And his over-the-top seriousness plays off of Billy Batson's character really well. Plus, maybe I'm just biased, because I love Mark Strong in general. The character isn't anything amazing. If this was a lesser actor playing this role, this probably wouldn't be this high for me. But based on Strong alone and how well he fits into this film, I'm going for good. Doomsday. I'm gonna say bad, although it could slip into what were you thinking? I mean, I know what they were thinking. They wanted a giant villain at the end for Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman to team up on. They can't very well team up on Lex Luthor. That would be over in 1 second. Although, not because of Superman or Wonder Woman, but because Ben Affleck Batman would shoot him in the face. Anyway, Doomsday. He's horrible to look at, and not in like a, oh, what a terrifying monster sense. Just design-wise. I guess it fits the Snyder world, but that doesn't make it a good design. Plus, he shows up right at the end of the film. I'm not expecting him to have a ton of development, but considering this is a villain that is pretty iconic in the DC world, it's a bit of a shame that they could have been punching pretty much any monster in that finale and it would have been the same. They could have been punching a big green screen dummy and it pretty much would have been the same. Maybe that's more of a comment on BVS's pacing in general, so I guess this villain did serve his purpose in that movie, even if that purpose is questionable. It's not the absolute worst villain ever, but he's still bad. Black Manta, another Aquaman villain that again, I'm gonna put in good for very similar reasons to Ocean Master. I feel like I've said this a million times, but he's not the most developed villain in the world, but I think he works very well in the role he's supposed to play in this film. He's a secondary villain who's there to create some problems for the heroes along the way and have some fun action scenes, and he does that quite well. The costume is dead-on comic accurate in a goofy style that fits Aquaman's tone and style quite well. The performance is pretty good again for this style of over-the-top comic book film. He serves his purpose pretty well in that movie, so I'm going with good. General Ludendorf. Meh. Pretty nothing villain. The most memorable thing about him to me is that I was studying World War I at the time I saw this film, and I was thinking throughout, that's not the most accurate portrayal of Ludendorf, is it? Oh, actually, that's a lie. The most memorable thing is that he has this moment.
But the Musk won't help.
They don't know that.
Which is hilarious, I think unintentionally, but I can't really tell. Anyway, yeah, not much to say for him. Not great, not awful. We move on to what has become kind of an iconic villain, just not in the way I think it was meant to, Jared Leto's Joker. As more time has passed, the more ridiculous this portrayal has looked. I remember when that first image came out, people were not happy with it, but then some of the snippets we were seeing in the trailers actually looked promising, and then the film came out, and he was in it for like 2 seconds. It's hard to even judge this performance, because so much of it was apparently cut out, you almost have to wonder if maybe it would have been decent with more context if they'd left all of that in, and the way they cut it and what they decided to leave in just ended up being laughable. I kinda have my doubts though that the rest of this would have been better. The idea of this kind of Joker, more of a modern type crime boss, could be interesting, but man, what this ended up being is just a bit embarrassing in hindsight. This performance is a lot like the look of this Joker. Over the top, no subtlety, unintentionally funny. I mean, come on, that damage tattoo on the forehead will never not be funny. It just seems like someone acting crazy with no real direction. And again, maybe that's because they cut a bunch of it out, but considering how much preparation Jared Leto apparently put into this, it just feels like someone just said, alright, be crazy. And it's just so, I don't even know, cringy? Funny? It's just weird. I do quite like this villain simply because of those crazy set stories. Listening to James and Mason talk about Jared Leto's on-set antics are some of my favorite Weekly Planet memories. So I guess if nothing else, it did give us that. But yeah, I'm gonna have to put this in What Were You Thinking? Enchantress's brother CGI man. What was this dude's name? Incubus? Yeah, this one's going on What Were You Thinking? There isn't really much to say. As a character, there's barely anything to him, and CGI-wise, he's one of the worst-looking DC villains, so even if he was just supposed to be a henchman for some cool action scenes, his CGI lets him down on that, so there's really nothing going for him. Yeah, right there. Up next is Zod. I gotta say, this may be the best DCU villain we've had so far. For me, this is what comes closest to a villain I could say is actually just a good villain, regardless of if it's in the context of DCU villains or not. Michael Shannon gives a really good performance. Yes, I know some people make fun of some of his acting here, but personally, I think it works really well in creating a more frightening, deranged villain. I also like that this is a villain who can fight Superman physically and give him a challenge, and while I don't think all of that fighting is done very well, some of it is pretty exciting. He also is a more interesting character and has a more developed motivation than pretty much any of these other villains. So yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good superhero movie villain. Dr. Poison. I'll give her a meh. In a similar way to Ludendorf from Wonder Woman, her most memorable moment was the over-the-top bad guy laugh. She wasn't awful from what I remember. Kinda interesting villain design with the plates covering the scars. Feels a bit James Bond villain-esque. But ultimately, there wasn't that much to her. The Shazam Monsters. Those 7 deadly sins things. I wasn't a big fan of these. I didn't really like their design. I feel like there could have been a bit more creativity there. They ended up being just kind of generic Scooby-Doo monsters. And yes, I know Shazam is a cartoony movie, and I quite enjoyed that, but how Scooby-Doo-ish these monsters are kind of took me out of the film a bit. I'll give them a meh, because to be fair, they did serve their purpose in that film. They were just meant to be big, ugly monster henchmen for some action scenes, and they did that. So, meh. Amanda Waller. I actually quite enjoy this character. I may be biased because I remember the whole Waller storyline in the JLU show, and so that familiarity might make me enjoy the character more. But I thought Viola Davis did quite a good job in Suicide Squad, and was one of the better performances in there. And I wouldn't mind seeing her as this character again. She's not strictly evil, but she is manipulative and uses people as pawns, and yeah, does some terrible things. As far as DCU villains go, she's towards the top for me. Also wish we could have seen more of her and Ben Affleck's Batman going against each other. I think that could have been a really fun storyline throughout some of these films. And finally, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. He's gotta be What Were You Thinking, right? I kinda like the consistency, at least, in the DCEU that the 2 biggest villains they have, they chose very odd and questionable approaches with both of them, and we got these 2 bizarre and quite polarizing versions of the characters. The thing is though, I don't blame Jesse Eisenberg for this, not fully at least, because I think he performed the character he was given as well as he could. I think the problem is the character he was given is just so weird. It was a bold choice of how to handle such an iconic character.
Is bold the right word?
To go in such a new direction, but it just doesn't really work. He's not intimidating, he's not threatening, his insanely clever schemes don't come across as that clever, and seem to only work because the rest of the characters in that film often also operate on weird, nonsensical logic to push the plot forward. He pisses in a jar. I don't know why I brought that up, but I don't like it. He has ridiculous hair. It's just such a weird performance that in a film that is also trying to take itself so seriously makes for some unintentionally incredibly hilarious moments. So yeah, that's gotta go there. Also, I just realized Black Mask isn't here. He counts as a major villain, so I'm gonna throw him in here with the magic of editing. This might be my favorite DCEU villain, actually. Definitely going in the good tier. Could even maybe go up to a great tier if I had one, but for now, he can definitely be leading the good tier. Ewan McGregor's performance is so great. He has quite a few moments that genuinely made me laugh.
Yeah, he's 1,000 years old, and now he's just an ornament in my living room. Ooh, I love it.
And he is also a bit frightening in the sense that McGregor's performance makes you believe he really is crazy and unhinged. Plus, he has the benefit of an R rating over the rest of these villains, so he can actually do some frightening, brutal stuff. So yeah, great villain, lots of personality, very fun, kinda sad he was killed off. Alright, so here's my tier list. Again, if you want to make your own, there's a link down below in the description. Also, I want to make a little announcement here. Some of you may know a while ago I did a podcast called The Poorly Planned Podcast with a friend of mine, where we talk movies and TV and all kinds of stuff. Actually, that's mainly it. Well, now that we finally have the time again, we're going to be making a bit of a comeback. We're going to be doing a little run of podcasts, hopefully throughout the summer. I know those who listen to them really miss them, so we want to do one more run over the summer. Who knows if we'll revisit it later after that, but the point is, right now, we're doing more. So, go over to the pod channel, card right here, link down below as well, subscribe, and check it out. Do not expect in-depth movie analyses, it's purely just meant to be fun and entertaining. It's basically just me and my friend goofing around for 30 minutes. I think it's a pretty fun show to listen to, so go check it out if you so please. So, that was my DCEU villain tier list. That DCEU acronym really does not roll off the tongue, does it? Do you agree or disagree with my ranking? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.